Thanks for checking out the I Am More Than podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Wessel, a former Miss Arizona USA, professional model, self-acceptance advocate, hype girl, and founder of More Than Inc. In this podcast, we talk about the things that actually matter, from mental health to health and wellness, body image and confidence, and social issues. We're here to uplift, educate, inspire, and grow together. Each week, we'll feature a unique and incredible woman to share her story of how she's so much more than whatever you may know her as. We'll laugh, cry, and feel inspired in every episode, and trust me, there's no topic off limits. Whether you're commuting, working, or enjoying a glass of wine, we're so honored to have you here, and I'm excited to welcome you to the More Than movement. We're just getting started. This week's guest is a talented photographer, entrepreneur, creative director, dog mama, fiance, friend, and so much more. In this episode, we chat about leaving the modeling industry after realizing how toxic it was on her, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Since leaving, she's been determined to do things every day that bring her true joy. We chat about leaving relationships and friendships that no longer serve you and how she maintains a positive mental health. She's candid about the 3-year journey it took to build her faux freckle company, Sato Labs. Sato has been featured in Vogue, Rose Inc., and recently seen on Lizzo. Yes, Lizzo. We'll be teaming up for a giveaway, so make sure you stick around for the whole episode. I love how honest, real, and self-aware she is. She gives such great and tangible advice throughout this entire episode, and I'm so excited for you to get to know my friend, Brooke Hanmer. This episode is brought to you by Press Premium Alcohol Seltzer, the only woman-owned seltzer among the top 10 seltzer brands. If you've been following me on Insta, you know I fell in love with Press last summer. First off, because of how chic the packaging is, but also because of how truly delicious the flavors are. In my opinion, they taste more like an expensive cocktail you'd get on the beach than your typical seltzer. All the flavors were developed by Amy, the founder, in her kitchen, which obviously made me fall in love with the brand. They have 9 premium flavors, my personal favorite being the lime lemongrass or the pomegranate ginger. I'm all about supporting female-owned businesses, and I'm honored they have the same mission. To get your hands on Press, go to enjoypress.com to find a retailer near you. Now let's dive into the episode. Welcome to the I Am More Than podcast, Brooke. I'm stoked to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I've never done anything like this.
Surprises me because I feel like you'd be perfect like hosting one of your own.
Oh my gosh. It takes a special person to host a podcast. I don't know that I have it in me, but I've been loving what you've been putting together.
Thank you. Well, you do a million other things. You are one of the most multifaceted, creative, badass women I know. So I'm so stoked to have you on and for people to just get to know you better because I'm truly amazed by you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I do what I can. I really do love having like a arm and a leg in so many different aspects, but I feel like I would love to like commit to one or two. You know?
Yeah, it's not your personality. You're always going to be in so many different things. And I was thinking back to when we actually met each other, and that was in 2014 at that random pageant somewhere in Arizona.
I know,
right?
Sometimes those photos pop up.
I know. That was a crazy weekend.
So
and we hit it off right away and have been able to stay connected through all of these years. And I've always just really admired like how sure of yourself you are. Like you've always had the best advice. I've admired your confidence. And I just want to know, like, where does all of that come from?
That is really funny that you say that because I was completely enamored with you when I met you. Obviously, I was in a silly little pageant in, Laughlin, Arizona. And, I really was in love with the idea of pursuing Miss California at the time. That's kind of when I was like in the midst of modeling. And I don't even know where that pageant came from, but I'm so glad that I did it. It's those little go through in life that connect you to other people and, going forward, because it's been so nice keeping in touch all of these years, even though we really haven't been in the same place.
Yeah.
So that's been fun. As far as the confidence, I was enamored with your confidence, so it's interesting to me to feel like people have so much confidence while you feel that way. They don't. I don't remember being confident ever. I mean, even now, like I do what I can, and like I'm very stubborn and I'm like very opinionated. I guess that just comes off as confidence. Confidence is something like we really, really have to work at every single day.
That's so interesting because just like you said, like you would never know. Because I feel like the most confident women, and I've learned this,
Mhm.
especially through this podcast, because I always like to know where women's confidence is coming from. And I feel like even the most confident people still have insecurities and they're still working towards being confident. And just because some days are better than others doesn't mean that we're not all still struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel like over the years I've been able to kind of gather memories and thoughts and look back and say like, wow, I've really, really grown over the last couple of months because I didn't used to be able to do this, walk into a room and have a conversation with anyone. I didn't actually used to like maybe in 2016, I wasn't even comfortable going to the grocery store because I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. Like
Wow.
so embedded in insecurities that I really didn't want to like leave our apartment. And I think over the years, like you have so many different experiences and you push yourself through them and you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, whether you want to or you're forced into them. And each one of those experiences, you grow a little bit. So it's a slow grow, but you do get there and you just don't realize it until you look back and collect those pieces.
I love that. That's
So
so well said and
it's
so
it's been
true.
a slow grow collection. Yeah, but
That's
I do
awesome.
feel like you also gain a lot from being, I don't want to say like tormented over the years or hurt, but in some sense, through those painful pieces of life, you also gain confidence. And every time I walk away from an altercation or a really bad friendship or a breakup, I'm really grateful for going through it because you do gain that confidence to kind of push forward in other aspects of life.
Yeah. And to know what you deserve when you're in those relationships and to know what you don't. Because I think, especially when we're younger, you just kind of stay
Yeah.
in something because you assume that that's where you need to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, until our last breath, you're just continuously gaining that confidence and that personality and that know-how. So
Yeah.
it's ever evolving.
Yep. We all are. So take me back to
Yeah.
where you were in 2016. What was going on in life? Were you in the modeling industry at that point? Where do you think those insecurities were coming from?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was deep in the modeling industry. I think that might have been my last year in it. I feel like I've suppressed so much of my modeling industry life that it's hard to go back and kind of weed through it. But yeah, it was really bad. I feel like the more I tried, the worse I was, the worse I cared about myself. To be constantly beat up by agents and clients is so exhaustive that it's like being parented by someone that hates you, like by parents that just consistently verbally abuse you. You kind of start to believe that that's just what you are. For a long time, I struggled with weight loss. I struggled with, you know, really, really, really severe dieting tricks. I struggled with sobriety. I struggled with a lot of different things to kind of figure out how I could be better in a world where, I really was never going to be my best self. So eventually, I met Mel, and I would come home consistently after every job, every day, crying. I can't do this anymore. Just so bad for me right now. And he asked me, what is it that you want to do with yourself? And I said, I really want to be on the other side of the camera. I really want to be in creative control and put projects together. And I don't really know how that fits into life, but I want to be on your side. I want to have control over what goes on. I don't want to be controlled anymore. I think there was one other modeling job that I went to. It was like my 9 to 5 e-commerce job. And I pulled up out front and I started crying. And that was the day that I didn't go in and I never went back. I
Wow.
told them, like, I can't be here. And I never went back.
I mean, that takes a lot of strength to walk away from
It was
something
heavy.
that is security in some sense, something that
Yeah.
that's what you know. I mean, it takes a lot of strength to take yourself out of that environment.
Yeah. And it definitely wasn't easy getting on the other side of the lens either, but it definitely was worth the struggle, whereas modeling never really was.
Yep. And I think that people assume that the modeling industry is as glamorous and as beautiful and as wonderful as some people make it look. And how we grew up seeing
Hmm.
magazines and the women on TV thinking, like, oh my gosh, they've made it. And I
Yeah.
think that every time you talk to somebody that's been in this industry for long enough, you'll find out that that's not the reality. There's a lot of dark stuff
Yeah.
that goes on behind the scenes, and there's very few women that have gone through the industry and not struggled with some form of an eating disorder, body dysmorphia, or just really extreme self doubt. I really like the analogy
Yeah,
you use. It's like
absolutely.
being parented by someone that hates you.
Yes. Yeah. It feels like the only people that should care about you just don't. And also, I feel like it was exhausting to only care about me. You wake up, you wonder, like, are my nails in good condition? My eyebrows, my skin, I got to go to the gym. Like, to just only be considering you is really heavy. And it takes a really special type of person to kind of prioritize yourself and the other things that matter in life, because it's exhaustive to care about your appearance all the time.
Yeah,
It doesn't leave very much room to kind of work on the inside.
I love that. And it's interesting. I didn't even know the extent of what you went through with the modeling experience, because I remember coming out and seeing you in 2017 when you were behind the camera and your work was so beautiful. And I was like, can we just create something? Like, let's just have a fun day. We'll drink wine, we'll
Yeah.
shoot, it'll be amazing. And you gave me the best advice because I kept saying, I just want to be signed by an agency. And you stopped everything and you said, why do you keep saying that though? Like, what do you think they're going to bring you? And it was the first time that I was like, I mean, you're kind of right. Like, why am I so desperate for that validation? And that was the first shoot that I felt like I just totally let go, had the time of my life. And shockingly enough, that's the shoot that got me signed.
I love that so much.
Isn't that
That's so
crazy?
amazing. Yeah.
Like, you helped me so much by telling me not to invest myself so emotionally in this industry. I think you saved me a lot of heartache.
Just kind of knew that you were bigger and better than just being show an agency. I do remember having those thoughts, like, just put your personality out on the internet, find the brands that you love and share them with people online, and just stay true to like what you really love. And if people love that, then you'll grow your following and you'll have a voice, and that's all you really need,
Yep.
because agencies can only do so much for you.
Seem like you were able to really step outside, and you've always had vision for so many amazing things. I think that's why you're so creative and so good at what you do, because you see trends that are coming. You aren't afraid to like step outside of the box.
You're
And I
so
think
sweet.
that, I mean, your experience definitely led you to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Over the last couple of years, I've started to surround myself with people that truly like bring me joy. Once you surround yourself with people that you love, even if you are bottom of the totem pole in what they've achieved and what they're doing, you just grow. Your mind is just in a better place than friends and people around you that, are just stagnant.
Yeah.
Which sounds cliche, but
But it's true.
every time I walk away from a lunch with a girlfriend, I'm like, okay, what did I get out of that? Do I want to do that again? Is that something I want to keep pursuing every single time I have an interaction with someone? Even in business, I'm like, if I have to continue to work with this person, it has to be a beneficial relationship. The verbiage has to be great. I have to be able to have like really great communication, positivity, because I just can't afford to put anything other than that in my life.
I think that that is so profound, because there's a lot of people, and I think especially younger women too, that are coming into being in a creative industry, or really for anything, that assume that they need to surround themselves around people that, even if they're draining their energy, they continue going back to. Like, they're forced to work in this situation, or they're friends with this person because they've always been friends with this person. Where I think what you're saying is so important to kind of check yourself, whether it's business or personal.
In any aspect of life, I like to remove myself from the situation and think of the bigger picture of how many days am I going to spend here being happy? I can't afford to spend any seconds, because the biggest commodity in life is time. So any time wasted in a negative situation is just someone stealing your time. And I'm not up for that
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. I love that.
I don't care if, it's going to make me millions and millions of dollars. I just can't do it. It's not
Yep.
worth it.
No, your happiness and your peace of mind And your love for life is far more important. You can't put a monetary value on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you talked a lot about through modeling, you weren't really able to work on your own inner peace and make sure that you're good with yourself. What are some things that you've done over the past few years to make sure that you're focusing on yourself from the inside out?
The day that I stopped modeling, I stopped doing a lot of different really terrible dieting habits. And I kind of pushed forward and just said, I'm going to work out when I feel like it. I'm going to eat what I want. I'm going to move through life at the pace that I need to kind of clear my mind and just, fall in love with myself again. And I actually haven't stopped doing that. At times it's good and at times it's bad, but if I wanted to drink wine, I drank wine. If I wanted to have a cheeseburger, I had a cheeseburger. I did all the things that made me feel good. I leaned out. I was able to play sports again and have a little bit more endurance to myself when I stopped being so hard on myself, because I was comfortable working out and I was comfortable eating healthy because it was something I really wanted to do at that moment. I didn't put so much pressure on my inabilities to get that done during the day and then feel bad if I hadn't done it. And I kind of do that now. If there's something that I want to do that day, if I really am having a really bad day at work, I stop what I'm doing and I go find happiness.
I really love that.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people, again, kind of going back to surrounding yourself around people that don't make them feel good. I think a lot of people think you should just power through. And at the end, it'll be worth it. And it doesn't matter how you're feeling about it. You just need to produce. And I think that's where a lot of people get drained, whether they're in this industry or not, is because you have to be good from the inside out in order to really be doing work that's meaningful.
Last year, as we all were, and a couple of my girlfriends were like, get a therapist. And I'd never done anything like that. So I pursued it. I started doing acupuncture, working out a bunch, eating clean, mostly it was all geared towards wedding things, getting myself back on track. And I kind of started to feel a lot like the modeling days. I'm thinking too much about myself, and not doing what feels good right now. So I quit therapy. I was like, this is not making me happy. This is exhaustive and I'm just not in the right headspace to pursue this. And it wasn't like we were really deeply rooted into anything uncomfortable. It was just kind of taking up time, and I was like, I just don't feel like this is fitting my life right now. I was working out so much, tennis was consuming my life. I was playing tennis 2 or 3 times a day, 5 days a week, just really going at it, taking Spanish lessons to try to better my brain and grow there. And it got so exhaustive that I came to a point where I was like, I need to pick and choose what's making me happy because I'm running myself ragged. I'm hardly eating anymore. Work is falling behind. So I sat down and kind of figured out where I could fit in the things that brought me happiness without over exhausting myself. And I just checked in with myself to say, is this feeding me the way that I want it to? And if it's not, I stopped doing it and got back into that mode of what's bringing me joy on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. It sounds like you're constantly checking in with yourself, which is really important.
I'm a huge lover of self-help books and I'm a huge lover of hating on self-help books too. So every time I read one, I'm like, nope, that's not for me, but I'm glad I read it. So I love psychology. I love checking in with myself. And I think that's why it makes it so hard for me to pursue therapy because as a Taurus, I feel like I've got it all figured out, but I just do the best that I can within the day to be happy. And I think keeping that as your number one priority, you really just can't go wrong because that's all we should really focus on filling our days with.
Yeah. Have you noticed there's specific practices that you're putting into play almost every day that is continuously making you happy or making you better?
Yeah. I do stick to a little bit of a routine. I was doing that 5-minute journal a day. And I was like, I feel like there are other things that I want to say other than the things that it's asking me. So I set that aside and I started doing my notepad on Apple. And my acupuncturist originally brought up that idea of journaling. So I found that journal and I pursued it and I didn't love it. It wasn't doing anything for me the way that I'd hoped it would. I know in the book it says to just keep going at it and it will all come together, but it never really did. So I just started writing down 5 sentences a day, and it could be anything, just 5 insignificant sentences. And as I started doing that at the end of the day, the next day I would think about, is this something that I would want to write? Is this something that, you know, and then I'm starting to pursue things in life that I want to write down that make me happy, that, you know, I want to bring into that notepad and be proud of.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love your honesty too, because I think that so many people give blanketed statements of like, oh, if you're struggling, like you need to do that 5 minute journal, you need to go to therapy, you need to read these books. And a lot of the time it works for some people, and the people it doesn't work for, I feel like they don't really say anything. So everyone's under the same impression that if you do these few things, you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be happy. And I really love your authenticity and your honesty. Like, nope, didn't work for me.
Yeah, yeah, it's not a one size fits all, a lot of those different things. If you try something and you have an idea of like, well, this isn't working because of X, Y, and Z, how can I make X, Y, and Z happen for me? I think that pushes boundaries a lot. And I like to apply that to different aspects of life. That's how innovators come up with different ideas of like X, Y, and Z is missing.
Yep.
How can I find it?
Yep. And that's exactly what you are. You're an innovator. And that exact shoot that I was referring to
Oh,
back
thank
in
you.
2017, I remember you being like, come here, I'm going to put this product on you. This is what I'm developing. And at that time it was Freck You.
Yeah.
And it was the most innovative, mind-blowing concept to me, because I was like, one, how does this not exist? Two, genius. And
You are so sweet.
I respected the fact that you told me you were going to do it there. And then I got to watch you play it out for years. I mean, you kept at it. You went through so much to bring your vision to life. And I think that people assume that, like, okay, if you have an idea, you try it. If it doesn't work, you give it up. And that was not your
Yeah.
story at all. So I'd love to hear from like conceptualizing Freck You to now owning a business and an incredible product. Like, what was that like?
Oh my gosh, it was a nightmare. It was a complete nightmare. Do you remember getting your driver's license and thinking to yourself, like, man, I can't wait until I get my driver's license and it feels like it will never come and I'll never be able to achieve something that grand. It's so hard and it seems so far away. And I just, I can't even fathom the feeling of finally achieving having a driver's license. That is exactly how production felt. And I was like, yeah, it's a nice idea, and it's fun, like working at it, but I don't know if this will ever happen, like that's
Yeah.
how production felt for 3 years of like
Three
talking and
years.
scheming and planning. And yeah, it was, oh my gosh. My girlfriend Kat had said something. She said, oh man, as soon as this is done, though, you're going to feel so good. And I was like, no, I'm not. Because as soon as this is done, that's when the real work starts. And that itself is overwhelming. Like none of this has been easy at all. Every day is just so new and just a consistent stream of learning. And I think that's when it gets easy, is when you've already learned something, because that's just repetition.
Yeah.
But the thing about building a business is just continuous learning. And it's so exhaustive. It's so frustrating. It's so hard. It's so challenging. And you just, there's been times when I'm like, I just want to give up and just be a housewife, and
Mm-hmm.
just be done. Like just live quaintly and keep my mouth shut and live the days out, like it's been so frustrating. And then, you come back to reality and you're like, nope, you got to keep pushing through. And then those little tiny wins, oh, they make it all worth it,
They mean everything.
just like getting 5,000 followers on Instagram. You're like, I did it. The little, really, really little things. It's been really challenging. I don't even really know where to start with like how it really came about. It
How many?
feels like it's
It,
all I've ever known. So
yeah. Well,
exhausting.
it's taken up so much of your time, and you went back and forth with production. How many times?
So many times. We retooled the bottle at least, and that's a challenge because to retool takes probably 3 or 4 months. We retooled it at least 15 times. Like
Oh,
it took a long time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
And you really couldn't start the real work until you had the product.
exactly. And for a long time, like I was shooting content and getting excited and testing the product out. They were just from samples. So the components themselves didn't perform as well. And my girlfriends were so sweet to just let me splatter this junk on their face, again and again and again when it didn't perform as well as it should have. So I look back at that content a lot, and I'm just so grateful for all those experiences and all the people that really helped me grow, because you yourself, like little things like that, they grew. They grew Pseudolabs tenfold.
This is wild. And you've now been featured by Rose Inc., all over the place. Like that's huge. And I
Yeah.
know firsthand like what it took to get to where you are. And I think that you deserve a
Mm-hmm.
giant pat on the back, a big old bottle of wine to just celebrate the fact that
Thank
you
you.
went through as much as you went through just to like have a company up and functioning.
At least now, like I'm not fighting to make myself better. Like I'm fighting for my employees. I'm fighting for the company. I'm fighting for our influencers to just keep it up and running. Like I'm actually fighting for something that, a lot of people love. That's a way more comfortable feeling. It's definitely more stressful than caring just about myself in the
Yep.
modeling industry, but it's way more beneficial.
Oh,
For
yeah.
sure.
Definitely. Just like you said, too, like when you were in modeling, only thinking about yourself, that's exhausting. But then when you start thinking about other people that are depending on you, that's exhausting too. So it's like you got to pick a fine line, which is tough to do.
Yeah.
How many
Yeah.
employees do you have now?
I have two. I was up to four, and with pandemic, we went down to two.
Wow,
But I fought every day as hard as I could.
girl, I believe it. And you guys are super inclusive. You have so many different shades and you're diverse in your marketing. And that I
Yeah.
know that was really important to you, but can you share a little bit about how much added pressure that was just because you had to make up so many different colors?
Totally. Yeah. So the brand itself, I've always wanted to scream like inclusivity. And it's been really hard to push that message with the shades because they're all hyper pigmented. So on the deepest, darkest shades, the lightest shade shows up. So anyone, any skin tone, any skin type can have freckles. But the brand itself, with the new products coming out, will kind of voice that message a little bit better. I think, other than the products that you carry, your message and branding and your message as a company within your team and within your ideas should be louder than the products themselves, because you have to start at the root of a company to kind of put that messaging out into the world. So around June this year, when everything started happening with the BLM movement, I was so fired up, and there were a couple of employees that just really couldn't grasp where I was coming from, because I was so angry, and I was so motivated to be part of this movement in a bigger way, than just donating. So being more inclusive and not just, throwing a photo of deep skin into an Instagram, but actively trying to educate and move forward with inclusivity, and not just in terms of the Black community, but also like Asian culture and Latinas, and just trying to get as many different faces in freckles so we could push that messaging and that branding behind inclusivity out into the world. But I really was fired up last year about just being as inclusive as possible.
I share that fire with you because I think that for so long, I assumed that things weren't as bad as it actually was. And then with the pandemic and with
Yep.
every distraction taken away and it stripped it all back and we got to see what's actually going on. I don't understand how people weren't fired up and how companies were continuing business as usual. And I think it was really cool that you were so vocal about it because I think you have to be. You have to make sure that people understand if they're shopping your product that that's what you stand behind.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's better to try and fail than to not try at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because, just like you, I thought things were peachy keen. And that's, white privilege. So
Yep.
with the second I completely understood that, my eyes were widened. I was like, I cannot believe I've been living this my whole life. This is
Yep.
overwhelming. you know, and, it's just been such a eye-opening couple of months to just move through that. And I definitely think like, going forward, Pseudolabs will have its slips, and it's all about just learning and growing and moving past it and hoping your community can forgive you for, making those mistakes.
Yep.
But
And
you
I
have to
think
try.
we have to try. And I think just exactly what you said, having white privilege and not understanding how much white privilege you actually had was a really difficult conversation that I think a lot of people had to have with themselves, to kind of be like, what the hell have I been missing? Like this, I need to really relearn what's been actually happening in the world around me. And I think that's one of the many blessings that came out of the pandemic, is it really woke people up.
Yeah, we've all been growing. I
Yep.
mean, the majority of us, at least.
Yep, exactly. The majority. And you, you were in LA last time I saw you, and then you actually moved to Puerto Rico. Can you tell me a little bit about why that happened, and also what it's been like just adjusting not only your business, but your personal life there?
A couple of years ago, Mel was like, there's this really great tax incentive for my business if we moved to Puerto Rico. And I was like, April Fools, nice try. And he was like, okay, table it. And then I think a year went by, and I was really struggling to push forward in my last job, which was content and social director for Wow Skin Science, a health and beauty brand. I just wanted to be like a bigger, more active role on the team, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity for me there. And at the same time, I was developing Pseudolab, so I was just not really feeling happy in LA anymore. I kind of gone through it with a couple of girlfriends that weren't really serving me happiness anymore. And I looked at Mel and I was like, let's try it. Worst that can happen is we move back,
Yep.
Anyone would be so grateful for this opportunity. I'm ready. Let's just try it and see what happens. At least we can travel. Not. So
boom, pandemic.
so yeah, I know, right? So yeah, we moved into this really unique community called Dorado Beach, which is a lot of other really business savvy people saving on taxes. So they themselves are, doing really well in life, which brings a really interesting group of people to the table. And everyone is so different and diverse. Everyone has different knowledge, and it's fascinating to kind of get behind what other people are working on here, but also the people that I really identify with in here are busy, and a lot of the girls that I identify with, they're moms, and a lot of just different people are. It's just frustrating because there's just not anyone that does the same thing that I do, and that I can actually like
connect with.
I don't know, connect with. Yeah. While I do have a lot of great friends here, I feel frustrated because it's just not exactly what I'm looking for, and it gets isolating a little bit because, people can meet at certain times that I can't meet at, and different interests, and it's isolating. And I guess the downfall to that is more time to sit at my desk. I do feel occasionally like I'm missing out on life a little bit. I'm missing out on my friends and my family. And I always feel like when I go back to LA that, how Mars moves a little bit slower in terms of time. That's what Puerto Rico feels like. It feels like everything moves very slowly here. And when I go back there, everyone's lives have evolved and I've missed it. So that's the only downfall to living here, But other than that, the community is beautiful. It is whatever you make it. It's been really hard to not be able to travel.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you think a lot of that comes from being quarantined there when you really can't travel much to go see friends and family?
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't really like gotten together in groups here or anything like that. So we've kind of missed out on life here too. It's definitely taken a toll.
You guys are in a very exciting chapter of life too. You got engaged a year ago already. I can't believe it was a year ago. And you told me a little bit just about trying to plan a wedding and trying to kind of move forward in that part of life. And I'm learning very quickly how difficult it is to feel like you want to move forward and you really can't right now? Are you kind of relating to that?
Yeah, I think like the excitement in trying to plan a wedding or any activity is to plan it with other people, right? So when I'm bringing it up to my family and I'm bringing it up to my friends, they're not really on that level because of the pandemic. They're worried about, am I going to go back to work? Am I going to be able to see my sister soon? Am I going to, what does traveling look like in 6 months from now? So it's a lot of pressure to take like and put on someone else. I started to feel,
Yeah.
and then I started to get a little discouraged. And overall, after checking in with myself, I was like, okay, what's really going on here? This isn't really flowing the way that it should be, the way that I saw it in my head, which, newsflash, none of the wedding stuff does. Trying on dresses, I didn't cry once. There was no fairy tale moment, but I did still have a lot of fun.
I was going to say, did you find a dress?
I did.
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was just a lot of expectation around it. And I started feeling that pressure of like, this doesn't feel good. I don't like what's happening here. How can I remove myself from this feeling? What's going on? And just kind of eating away at like, well, this isn't happening. Why isn't this happening? What is the root of why I'm feeling this way in wedding planning? And it kind of just came back to pandemic. And I was like, doesn't matter what time until, the herd immunity is around. That's when the planning is going to ebb and flow the way that it should. So I'm going to remove the wedding from my life until things are back to normal. And it was such a relief.
That's wise
to remove it. And, for a while, like we talked about eloping, and I was like, I would love to do that if like the timing, the setting and all of that was right, but my mom would kill me. My friends would kill me.
Yep.
So, I'm not in a hurry. We've been together for 6 years, so it's all the same.
That's great. I can't believe it's been 6 years already.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like once you pass like the 4-year mark, it's just kind of like, okay, well, time just keeps on going.
It sure does.
I love it. And you had said in the very beginning, I need your advice on this because I think it's going to hit home with a lot of people that when you're not totally vibing with someone, or when you talked about being in LA and some of your relationships with your girlfriends, it just wasn't feeling good anymore. How do you handle those situations? Do you confront them? Do you just remove yourself subtly? How do you handle that stuff?
Yeah, so I find myself being the type of friend that needs connection and needs to know what's going on and needs to share everything that I'm going through to really feel like our friendship is connected and flowing and still there, especially being in Puerto Rico. But I was definitely like that in LA as well. Like I need that open line of communication for us to be really strong. So when it started to not serve me anymore and it wasn't working, I never really had those conversations of cutting it off, cut and dry. I just kind of said, I'm no longer going to give you time. So I'm not going to respond to texts. I'm not going to respond to calls. I just don't feel like this is really working for me, and just kind of start to move away from a friendship. And, obviously if they ask me like, what's going on, I'll tell them, I just don't really feel like we've been on the same page lately. And, if you want to work at that, like we can, but I just don't want to give time to something if like, it's not serving me back.
Yeah.
I would be open to having those conversations. I definitely feel like people go through different things and express things differently. So that's why I would give it time and push away from it and see if it came back. If it was meant to be, it will come back. And if someone notices that you're gone, they're going to say something, you know? So if things aren't working out, it's like a cooling off period that you just give yourself from someone,
Yeah.
And reevaluate it sometime down the road. If it fades out, then, it fades out and it's gone.
I love how honest of a person you are. I think that that's a superpower of yours. Because
you're so sweet.
But you've always been that way. But you've always been that way, that I'd be like, I'd ask your opinion on something and you'd actually give me your opinion instead of being like, oh yeah, that could be cute. You're like, no. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's a superpower and a curse. Depends.
Depends on the day. I do love that advice because I think that that's kind of tricky waters that a lot of people find themselves in. And I think that friendships, when you're in your late 20s and you're kind of at your own jobs, going on your own path, it's really hard to connect with new women and make new friendships. I think that's why a lot of people just stay in old ones, even when they aren't serving them, because it is tough. I don't know how people meet other people anymore, honestly.
I know. Yeah, I've had a couple of girlfriends say the same thing. Like, I just don't feel like she values me the same way that, I value her. And I'm like, I think you should just take a cooling off period and see what happens. And if it fades out, then And surprisingly, the couple of times that I've said that, my girlfriends have followed that advice and it's faded out. And that's sad, but it's just not meant to be.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think as far as meeting girls, so when I moved here, I actually got on Bumble for the first time. I've never had the ability to like pursue a dating app. So I didn't really know how they worked, but Bumble has like Bumble BFF. So I was like, I can't believe we're here. This is so embarrassing.
I love it. I need to know everything. Did you end up meeting friends from it?
This is so cheesy. Like the pandemic hit like around the time that like I was pursuing it, and then everyone was like, well, I don't really feel safe. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to revisit this like when things get better. So I haven't gotten back on, but it was really exhaustive because it felt like dating.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, I don't know why girls are interested in this. Like, this is so exhaustive. I couldn't imagine doing this with a man. Like, this is so hard, like, I don't really care. Like, let's get together over a glass of wine and talk about it. I don't want to talk about it over my phone.
Yeah.
So boring.
I message you and interview you.
Yeah. Funny. So that faded out. But I think as far as meeting people, I started tennis about a year ago. I've met some friends there, just getting into like, things like that. I actually was going to like online summits for beauty. I met some mentors there that we've, connected and became friends. Yeah. Instagram has been my number one friend maker for so long, just reaching out to someone and saying like, I really love this. This is so great. Like, great job, has kindled so many friendships for me.
Yep.
And then over time you see their life and you just feel like you know them. Mm-hmm. You're like, hey, let's get together. Like, it's comfortable. You know,
and by the time you meet up in person, it feels natural.
Yeah. You're not going on an interview because you kind of know a little bit about them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of, actually, it's funny that you brought up Bumble BFF because one of the reasons when I was looking at starting more then, I was like, we need to have like events in cities that have like a general topic. So it's like-minded women that can go and just like drink and get to know other people and like make friends. Because there's nothing that really like, you can do networking events, but then it's all like business and people aren't being themselves. There's nothing really else that you can just talk to people about like mental health and confidence and also share a glass of wine and like be goofy,
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do feel like those relationships are spawned in person. But that idea, I think like speed dating for friends would be so fun.
That would actually be so much fun. Do a full event with it and have a lot of wine. It'd be a blast.
That would be so fun.
When we can actually travel and when restrictions are lifted and when it's safe to do so, maybe we'll set up a speed dating friend round and you're coming.
I would love that. That would be so fun if you put that on.
Yep. I think we need to. I think we're all craving a little bit deeper of connections with other people because that's something that has kind of been robbed throughout the pandemic because it's hard to go into deep conversations with people over the phone, especially when you don't know them super well.
I know I'm craving it.
Me too. And that's why I've been trying to get these podcast episodes out as much as possible, because even if somebody isn't a part of the conversation, they can feel like they are and actually talking about deeper stuff. Absolutely. And knowing that we can talk about stuff that you normally don't bring up and feel less isolated, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I've been loving the podcast. I definitely have been, TV itself like is a little bit of a distraction, but to work and like have a podcast on in the back has been so friendly. It just feels like you're hanging out with someone. I totally agree. I love that.
But what are you seeing as the vision of where you want to be going with the company and your creative, like we said in the beginning, your hands always in a million different buckets. So what do you see for yourself post quarantine wanting to get into?
Yeah. So when we started February of last year, I was so excited to hire our PR agency and, get into the New York offices of all the different desk sites like Allure and Harper's Bazaar and a lot of those things like pop-ups and press dinners and influencer dinners and stuff like that. I felt like those are the things you have to do when you launch, to like create the buzz. And I just feel like I was totally and completely robbed of those experiences. So I really do want to like put all that out into the world as soon as things are done. And, we're working on getting into retail over the next couple of months. So I want to just travel and see the product in stores and, talk to the people on the floor and have conversations about how to apply it and, the things that are achievable by the product, just have those experiences in person.
I'm sure that's going to be a really gratifying feeling when you can see all of your hard work and you can actually see it in person all over the country.
Yeah. Yeah. And I try to kind of come back to it over the exciting things because it's so hard to see something really exciting happen and then say, okay, but it's not enough. Like to feel that feeling of like more. I'm trying to bring myself back into it and just kind of sit with that feeling of like the little wins and ability to sit and appreciate and actually like realize what I've accomplished, regroup and look at it because it's hard to do both, appreciate the wins and keep pushing forward.
Yeah. How do you do that? I need that advice for myself because I find myself doing the exact same thing where it's constantly like more, next thing. And I'm finding myself having a tough time sitting and just being like, nope, it's enough. How do you do that?
I know it's going to sound really cheesy and it's not for everyone. And I definitely don't do it right. But I meditate on it. I lay completely on the floor by myself, quiet, no dogs around, nothing, no sounds. And I try my best to focus on just those little things, like really lead through them and say, okay, what did it take to get here? What did I do to get here? And then you actually allow your mind to kind of see the process come, tenfold into fruition. Just those little wins of like, I hit a sales mark today. What are the things that I've done to get here? You forget in the midst of everything because your mind wants bigger and better and newer and, all the time. It's just embedded in us as humans. But to kind of sit and flow through what it took to get there is a challenge, to meditate on what it took. But I do really try to, put myself in that position. And then also like, I'll call my friends and they're like, every single time. And then that that gets you amped up too.
Yep. That helps. I love that. That's really, really good advice. Are you somebody that is able to meditate like daily? Is this something that you try and write? I'm like, I really want to do it, but I need to actually do it.
No, absolutely not. I have not broken through to that like kumbaya, like start my day thinking of nothing but my feet, like I'm not there. But in acupuncture, when you're sitting there with needles in you for an hour, you have nothing to do but think, like you cannot move. So that's kind of where it started. And I saw my thoughts like going to like interesting places and coming out the other end very positive. So I tried it like sitting on my floor, pretending like my needles were in me, either when I was stressed out or I was trying to break through something. And I know that's not how you like are supposed to meditate. You're supposed to think of like your breath and like be in the moment and be present. Nope, I'm never going to be able to do that. I have way too many things going on in here. So I try to like push through conversations and like push through, business models and math and, like really focus on one thing, whatever it be. And generally, like when you break it down within yourself, it comes out like positive. If you're going through something stressful, when you eat away and weed at it and focus on nothing other than that, there's nothing else to focus on other than like, I will survive this.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's great. It definitely helps. I'm not doing it correctly, but I'm doing it my own way. And I'm doing the X, Y, and Z
it
thing,
works.
and it's working.
And it works. I love it. I'm going to try that and I'll get back to you and see if it works for me too.
Yeah. Keep me posted.
I will. Yeah. Is everything that you've really been doing throughout your business, are you self-taught 100%?
Yeah, it's so hard. And I struggle because my fiance is a math analytics wizard. He is so great at accounting. He is so great at like business. Like he's just got it all going on. And you're going to figure it out yourself. I'm not helping you. I'm not doing anything. Like it's all you. You can figure it out. And you're not hiring anyone until you know exactly how to do their job. And that's what I had to do.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, I think we've gone too far. Like, this is a little bit too much. There's a reason why people hire other people. And it's not just because they can't do it. Like, you just don't have the time to learn all those things, So accounting, I'm like, I got the gist. Excel, took a 10-hour course on it.
Oh my
Got it. Okay, it's enough. So that's what I mean by being like multifaceted is like, I have too many arms and too many things and so much like itty bitty knowledge and so many different aspects of business that I'm like, I just really want to focus on what I'm good at and then outsource the rest of it. So definitely self-taught to the bare minimum extent of like passing grade.
Yes, of what you need. And then from there, I've found that like Google is literally my best friend. I watch way too many YouTube videos on like how to do things. And it works. Like if you have the patience to sit down and figure it out, you will figure it out. It might take forever, but you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than hair school, I have nothing but high school behind me. So in Google.
And look at everything
Google graduate.
Google graduate. There you go.
Still feel like I'm trying to like peek in on like other businesses and like, talk to them and ask questions. And I'm like knocking, like, how did you do this? What are you doing that works? Can you let me in? Like the creepy stalker.
Yep.
And they never do, everyone just like keeps it secret and keeps it hidden. And it's such an interesting aspect of like e-commerce of like, you just don't know how people are really doing, And I wish there was like a better space of like getting into that and saying like, this is what's working for me. Like, I know there are other groups, but they keep them so locked up and private and hidden. And I just would really like to know, like, this did not work for us. And this is really killing it. I'm just trying to knock on as many doors as I can until I get let into some e-commerce bubble.
Yep.
It's hard.
But persistence is everything. And if you've proven anything over the past few years, it's that you're a very persistent person. So you're going to figure it out no matter what.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try. I'm open to soaking up as much knowledge as people will allow me to soak up for sure.
Yep.
And I didn't used to always be that way because I'm a Taurus. So I know everything. But I've had to like flip the switch and switch gears and say like, okay, I'm an adult. I don't know everything. It's okay. I'm only going to know everything if I allow it to be taught to me. I am not the best. Stop thinking that, just allow yourself to be wrong every once in a while. And then you learn and then you grow. It's really hard for us Tauruses to do.
Are you super in check with horoscopes and understanding exactly what your sign is? Okay. I'm trying to get more versed in this area because I'm fascinated by it. I get my like daily horoscope, but I need to like look more into it. So how do you know so much? What are resources if people are interested in that? Where do they start?
It's funny. My sister used to be really into it and I was like, which? Because I grew up very Christian and my mom was like, that's not allowed. But it is interesting. There's something to be said for like the way the planets turn and the way like our bodies and our stars like adapt to it. I don't fully comprehend it. I don't know my moon rising and my sun Uranus. I don't know what all of that jazz is, but there's this really great Instagram called Co-Star and I started it there. So it'll kind of like say like the email you receive back after a bad day or whatever. And then it'll list all of the horoscopes and their responses. And it's really fun because if you know your friends, like my girlfriend Elena, she's a Leo, and everything that is geared towards Leos. I'm like, this is so you. And I send it to her and we laugh and you get to know the signs and like what they're about. So that's kind of what I do. But I know me as a Taurus, I don't read my horoscope every day or anything, but everything that I see, I'm like, yeah, it's nice to know like, okay, I am stubborn. Like all the negative things you know about your sign, you get to like apply to life and keep in mind like, I am being stubborn. Like I should tone it down a little. So
It
that's the
helps you.
reason that I really keep up with it. It's just to keep myself in check.
Everything about you is making sure that you're in check, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where that came from, but like I'm constantly being my own therapist for sure. Always.
That's probably why therapy wasn't the option for you, because you're like, I know how to get myself through this.
Maybe. Yeah. I'm like, you're taking too much time. I got this. Bye. Yeah. I mean, therapy is great. It's really hard to do during a pandemic, you
It
really got to
is.
have that face to face
Yeah.
chatter. But
Yeah.
yeah, horoscopes are so fun. I mean, you can't take any of it too seriously, right?
You can't take life too seriously. That's better said than done. But I keep reminding myself of that all the time. You can't take life too seriously.
Yes, it's so true. So true.
Oh, well, I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but I feel like we
Oh,
covered a
ditto.
million things, and I think people are going to learn
Good.
so much from you. You are so fascinating to me.
Oh, you're so sweet. I mean, I hope that I gave you something good in there.
You always do.
Hopefully some of that applies.
I appreciate it. You're the best. Thank you for just being honest and transparent and telling me all your secrets. I appreciate it.
Always. I'm happy to do it. Thank you so much for having me,
Of
Jordan. I'm so
course.
proud of you. You're killing it.
Thank you. Love you very much.
I love you too. Yeah. Congrats on all your exciting new developments in life too. I can't wait to
Thanks.
see them unfold.
Thank you, babe. I appreciate you. As promised, Brooke and I are teaming up to give a lucky listener some faux freckles of your own. You'll get a shade perfect for you and a chance to chat with Brooke about how to seamlessly apply. Check our Insta for all the giveaway details and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast to be entered. We hope you got just as much out of this episode as we did. And remember, you are so much more than. We'll see you next week.